was known as the Man of Steel, but Stalin's life was forged not only in steel, but also in blood and tears. From a poor boy in the mountains of Georgia to the supreme leader of the Soviet Union, his journey sounds like a fairy tale, but the ending resembles something closer to a horror film. Stalin, a great hero who led the Soviet Union to victory over Nazi Germany in World War II, or a ruthless dictator responsible for the deaths of millions through starvation, fear, and his own hand. From ambitious industrialization policies to the infamous Gulag labor camps, from shaping history to becoming one of the most controversial figures in the world, Stalin's life was a vivid canvas, but every color seemed to have a tinge of red. Join us as we delve into the story of a man whose very name inspires both awe and dread. You'll see that history is rarely black or white. It's often a deep, ominous shade of gray. Welcome to Faces of History. Here we uncover fascinating stories from the past and dive into the lives of legendary figures who shaped the course of world history. If you're passionate about history and the incredible journeys of those who made it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Let's embark on this inspiring journey through time together. Path to becoming the supreme leader of the Soviet Union. 1. Childhood and rise to power. A humble and unpromising beginning. Joseph Stalin, born as Joseph Vissarionis Dzyugashvili on December 18, 1878, in Gori, a small town in Georgia, had a childhood marked by extreme poverty, so dire that destitution hardly does it justice. His father, a drunken cobbler, often unleashed violent rages on the family. His mother, driven by an iron will, was determined to send Stalin to a seminary in the hope of securing him a future that would be nothing like his father's. Studying to become a priest, but ending as a rebel. Stalin enrolled at the Tiflis Orthodox Theological Seminary, a place expected to mold future priests. However, instead of prayers, Stalin found his devotion in the works of Marx and Engels, texts that were far from endorsed by the church. He became a covert activist, organizing protests, distributing leaflets, and eventually being expelled. The reasons? Violating discipline and reading banned books. This marked the turning point where Stalin abandoned the religious path to embark on the revolutionary road. 2. Early years in the Russian revolutionary movement. A swindler with a revolutionary brand. After leaving the seminary, Stalin joined the Bolshevik revolutionary movement. He became notorious for his organizational skills and his involvement in bank robberies to fund the cause. In one infamous heist in Tiflis, Stalin's group successfully raised capital of over 340,000 rubles, a staggering amount at the time. Though not a leading figure in the Bolshevik movement during its early years, Stalin demonstrated a remarkable knack for survival. While many comrades were arrested or assassinated, Stalin consistently evaded danger, steadily climbing to more influential positions within the movement. 3. Role in the Bolshevik Revolution. From Lenin to Stalin, a complex relationship. Under Vladimir Lenin's leadership of the Bolshevik Party, Stalin became a dependable deputy. While not a brilliant strategist, he stood out for his loyalty and organizational abilities. Lenin entrusted Stalin with logistical tasks, less glamorous but critically important roles that kept the revolutionary machinery running smoothly. The October Revolution. Where was Stalin? During the October Revolution of 1917, Stalin wasn't on the front lines. Instead, he worked behind the scenes, ensuring communication and organizing forces. After the Bolsheviks seized power, Stalin was appointed Commissar for Nationalities, a role that allowed him to begin building his own network of influence. 4. Stalin's rule. Lenin's departure, Stalin's rise. After Lenin's death in 1924, Stalin quietly but steadily consolidated his power. Rather than directly confronting political rivals like Leon Trotsky, he employed a strategy of divide and conquer, systematically eliminating opponents one by one. Within a few short years, Stalin had gained full control of the Communist Party and ascended as the supreme leader of the Soviet Union. The 5-year plans, an industrial punch. With a vision of transforming the Soviet Union into an industrial powerhouse, Stalin launched ambitious five-year plans. Factories sprang up across the nation, and steel and oil production surged. However, this progress came at a massive human cost, with countless workers and peasants laboring under brutal conditions and losing their lives in the process. Collectivization of agriculture, a dream turned nightmare. Stalin ordered the collectivization of agriculture, forcing farmers into state-run cooperatives. The result was catastrophic, leading to widespread famine, most notably in Ukraine, where millions perished. Despite the devastating toll, Stalin proclaimed success, bolstered by impressive statistics that mask the grim reality. Industrialization, achievements, and shadows. Under Stalin, the Soviet Union made significant industrial advancements, achieving milestones that cemented its status as a global power. Yet these accomplishments were built on the backs of immense human suffering. Millions were compelled into forced labor for massive projects, with many succumbing to harsh working conditions. When discussing Stalin, one often wonders, how did someone who read Marx and dreamed of a just world become the architect of such deeply unjust policies? Stalin was not just a leader, he was a master at turning pain into impressive numbers on reports. So how did someone like Stalin, with all the contradictions in his character and policies, rise to become one of the most powerful figures in the world? The answer lies ahead as we delve into his historical role and the controversial perspectives surrounding him. Joseph Stalin's influence on world history. 1. Leadership during World War II. From mistakes to victory. Stalin's role in World War II is undeniable, though it was not without major missteps. At first, he made a grave error by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Hitler, a divide-and-conquer agreement splitting Europe between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. Stalin believed this was a strategic move, but Hitler, unsurprisingly, broke the agreement. In 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a sudden invasion of the Soviet Union that caught Stalin completely off guard. For the first few days, Stalin was so shocked that he nearly lost control of the situation. The man of steel regains his ground. After the initial chaos, Stalin demonstrated that he was more than a planner of five-year plans. He became a formidable wartime leader, mobilizing every available resource to repel the German invasion. Under his command, battles like Stalingrad became symbols of Soviet resilience and strength. While some of his decisions, such as dismissing intelligence reports about the impending Nazi invasion, were perplexing, Stalin's leadership ultimately made the Soviet Union a decisive force in the Allied victory. From battlefield to superpower. Following the Soviet Union's victory in World War II, Stalin elevated it to the status of a global superpower. He secured control over much of Eastern Europe, creating a buffer zone of satellite states to guard against the West. To the Soviet people, Stalin was a liberating hero. To the West, a new nightmare called communism. 2. Impact on the Cold War. Stalin shapes a bipolar world. Victory in World War II brought Stalin not only fame, but also immense international power. He transformed Eastern Europe into a sphere of influence, establishing the socialist bloc to directly oppose the US-led West. This marked the beginning of the Cold War, a tense, silent confrontation with no direct battles, but constant underlying threats. The Warsaw Pact, Stalin's club. To solidify his control, Stalin spearheaded the creation of the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance of socialist countries designed to counter NATO. This escalated global tensions, plunging the world into a state of everyone has allies, but no one truly trusts each other. An ideological standoff. During the Cold War, Stalin promoted the Soviet Union as a paradise of social justice. Of course, in reality, this paradise came with constant surveillance by the KGB and a lack of personal freedom. Nevertheless, Stalin succeeded in shaping a significant part of the world to align with his vision, leaving a lasting ideological divide. 3. Legacy of industrialization and modernization. Factories and cities springing up like mushrooms. Under Stalin's leadership, the Soviet Union underwent rapid industrialization. The five-year plans transformed a primarily agrarian country into an industrial powerhouse. Entire cities like Magnitogorsk were built from scratch. becoming symbols of the Soviet Union's rise. The price paid. Of course, every miracle comes at a cost. Millions died in Gulag labor camps. Farmers were forced into collectivized farms, and countless industrial projects were constructed with sweat, tears, and no shortage of blood. Achievement or tragedy? Stalin built a powerful Soviet Union, but the immense suffering endured by its people cannot be overlooked. Were the massive factories and sprawling cities worth the millions of lives lost? The answer depends on your perspective. Stalin didn't just build factories, he built what could be called the largest industrial graveyard in the world. The victory in World War II might be his greatest glory, but let's not forget that part of that triumph was constructed on the seemingly infinite lives of Soviet soldiers. Stalin didn't just shape the world, he shaped how the world trembled before him. Looking back, Stalin was both a hero and a tyrant, but his story isn't over yet. In the next segment, we'll dive deeper into the controversial perspectives where history and morality collide most fiercely. Controversial perspectives on Joseph Stalin. 1. Repressive policies, a fear-mongering machine. The Great Purge, a Soviet nightmare. If one word could define Stalin's policies in the 1930s, it would be purge. During this period, Stalin launched the Great Purge, aimed at eliminating anyone he deemed a threat to the regime, including many who didn't even know they were enemies. Millions were imprisoned, tortured, or executed based on accusations of being counter-revolutionaries. Even the most skilled military generals were not spared, leaving the Soviet army weakened on the eve of World War II. The role of the KGB and the Gulag system. Under Stalin, the KGB, the predecessor of the Soviet Union's security agency, became one of the most powerful institutions in the world, tasked primarily with silencing dissent. Anyone could be labeled a traitor and sent to the gulags, labor camps where harsh conditions meant many never returned. The gulags were not just re-education centers, but also a terrifying economic engine. Prisoners were forced into relentless labor, mining resources, building railways, and completing massive infrastructure projects, all to fuel Stalin's industrialization plans. If you think a hard day's work is exhausting, imagine constructing a road in Siberia's winter without sufficient food or clothing. 2. Humanitarian consequences. The famine in Ukraine and beyond. Holodomor, a man-made catastrophe. One of the most harrowing events under Stalin's rule was the famine in Ukraine, commonly known as the Holodomor. The collectivization of agriculture disrupted traditional food production systems. When farmers resisted joining state-run cooperatives, Stalin ordered the confiscation of their food supplies, resulting in the starvation of millions. This famine was not accidental. Stalin was fully aware of what was happening, but viewed it as the necessary price for the Soviet Union's economic transformation. Of course, the dead had no opportunity to debate the supposed benefits of this economic progress. Long-term impacts. Stalin's repressive policies left deep scars on Soviet society. Fear became a daily reality, and trust between individuals was nearly obliterated. The memories of the gulags, the famine, and the Great Purge continued to haunt generations long after Stalin's reign, a grim reminder of the human cost of his rule. 3. Debates about Stalin. A great leader or a ruthless dictator? Stalin is one of history's most polarizing figures. Some view him as a savior who transformed the Soviet Union from a backward nation into a global superpower. They argue that without Stalin, the USSR would not have defeated Nazi Germany or stood toe-to-toe with the United States during the Cold War. Others see Stalin as a ruthless dictator who sacrificed millions of lives to maintain his grip on power. For them, his economic and military achievements can never outweigh the immense suffering he inflicted on his people. Perspectives from modern historians. Modern historians take varied approaches to Stalin's legacy. Some consider him a product of his historical context, a leader forced to employ harsh measures to survive in a hostile world. Others emphasize that Stalin's decisions often stemmed from paranoia and a lust for power, rather than genuine necessity for the country. What do Soviet citizens say? In the post-Soviet era, opinions among citizens are divided. Some remember Stalin as a great leader, particularly those raised during periods of state propaganda. However, for survivors of the gulags or families who lost loved ones during the Great Purge, Stalin is far from the father of the nation. To them, he remains an enduring nightmare. Stalin was certainly not the ideal father figure. Unless your idea of a dad includes shipping you off to Siberia for not finishing your homework. If you think modern governments are complicated, remember that Stalin created a system so convoluted that even he sometimes wasn't sure who he was purging. They say history is written by the victors. In Stalin's case, history was written by him, and everyone had to agree or risk being added to the Gulag list. The legacy of Joseph Stalin. Greatness or brutality? Joseph Stalin remains one of the most complex and controversial figures in modern history. His legacy is a vast canvas painted with starkly contrasting colors. On the positive side, Stalin transformed the Soviet Union from a backward agrarian nation into an industrial superpower capable of competing with Western countries. The Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II is perhaps one of Stalin's most significant contributions to world history. On the dark side, millions perished or suffered under Stalin's policies, from the Great Purge to the Holodomor famine. Fear and oppression became an indelible part of Soviet life during his rule. The political system Stalin built, centered on absolute power and total control, left lasting scars not only on the Soviet Union, but also on the entire socialist bloc. Stalin, a multifaceted legend. To some, Stalin is a symbol of iron will and determination. To others, he is the embodiment of brutality and tyranny. Perhaps the truth is that he was both, a figure of immense greatness and terrifying cruelty, depending on the perspective from which he is viewed. Was Stalin a symbol of greatness, transforming the Soviet Union into a superpower, or the epitome of brutality, with millions of lives sacrificed under his rule? What do you think? History is rarely black and white, and Stalin is perhaps the clearest example of this complexity. Consider this. Do the achievements of industrialization and victory in World War II outweigh the immense suffering endured by millions? Or is the cost simply too high to justify? Stalin is the kind of figure you're unsure whether to admire or avoid, because for him, the line between greatness and fear was so thin he could cut it with a revolutionary bayonet. If history were a stage, Stalin was the lead actor, the one who made the audience both rise to applaud and shiver in unease. Remember, as you reflect on Stalin, be grateful that today we can debate his legacy without fearing a one-way ticket to Siberia. The debate about Stalin continues to this day, and now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Joseph Stalin? Was he a great leader or a ruthless dictator? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next fascinating historical stories. Let's discuss and share your perspectives, because history always benefits from multiple viewpoints.